Hello, welcome to today's webinar on mindfulness for academic anxiety, brought to you by the Academic Resource Center at Georgetown University. Today, we're going to be going over a brief introduction to what mindfulness is and how it can be utilized in an easy way to respond in the moment to moments of anxiety due specifically to overwhelming academics. A question that can be helpful in breaking down the process of how mindfulness works is understanding why academics make us anxious. It begins with your mind being under stress due to an assignment that your brain is perceiving as a threat. So you have a major assignment, a deadline, an expectation, usually a test or a paper, and we become quite animalistic in terms of responding to this very administrative, mundane day-to-day process is something that we need to protect ourselves against. And that mental stress leads to our body to respond and physical symptoms begin to emerge as our bodies go into a fight or flight response. This means that our bodies, processing this threat that our mind has identified, begin to tense up. Maybe our heart is racing, maybe our bodies feel on edge. And that's because our bodies are prepared to either run or to fight against this threat as if it were a predator. Once this process has started, it can be quite difficult to break out of it because your mind and your body continue to fuel each other. The stress of your body makes your mind stresses out, which makes your body stress out. And these two become involved in a self-perpetuating cycle. So this response is meant to protect us, but when it comes to the realm of academics, actually this can end up paralyzing us instead and making it difficult to move forward. Ultimately, with this in mind, the best way to approach calming your mental symptoms is to calm your physical symptoms. And the best way to calm your physical symptoms is to calm your mind. So, in order to get past this mental barrier that's keeping you from moving forward with academics, it can be helpful to approach trying to relax your body so that then your mind can focus on the task in front of you in a productive way instead of a reactionary way. That leads us into understanding how mindfulness can be helpful as a tool. So, this might be a buzzword that you've heard a lot, but don't necessarily understand. So, it's helpful to break down what mindfulness is. This is the act of focusing on something in the present moment instead of focusing on the anxiety in your mind. Instead of just letting your thoughts continue to spiral and continue to build and build, instead you are finding something else where you can focus your attention. With that in mind, you're anchoring yourself to the physical world. And by recentering your attention mentally, that means that you can begin to allow your body to calm down. So you may be trying to fight academic anxiety by working through it and just focusing more and more on the mental need to do this work, but that can help this anxiety build. If instead you can focus on an external or a physical source, is how I should word it, that can allow your mind to calm down so that your body can calm down. One term that I used is anchor, and this is going to be a helpful tool for you in trying to develop your mindfulness toolkit. An anchor is that act, action, or object that can cement you to the physical world. It is the aspect that you are focusing on in order to pull yourself out of your thoughts. And there are a lot of different options for what this can be. You want to consider a specific tool that responds directly to your personal anxiety triggers. So, we're going to go over a few different anchors based on different anxiety triggers throughout this presentation. You might try all of them out. Maybe they all work, maybe none of them work, but it's going to vary based on what causes your anxiety in terms of understanding what can help you pull yourself out of it. It can be helpful in identifying these anchors to also consider what triggers your specific anxiety. So, what is it that heightens your specific stress level? A few areas that this anxiety can be exacerbated from. One is visual triggers. This could mean you're seeing something that is stressing you out. It could be other students working. It could be time passing, the clock. Some students have difficulty working on a computer because the clock is right there and you can't get away. It could even just be an overwhelming amount of text or content that you need to work through. Another type of anxiety trigger could be auditory, something that you hear and increases your stress. This is going to be the most common during test taking, I would say. It might be the sound of pencils scratching, clocks ticking, or pages turning. And often anxiety triggers can be internal. It might be feelings of self doubt, feeling incapable, or frustration at not being able to progress. And this could be instigated by looking over a question you got wrong, struggling to understand a concept, and then that can lead to this anxiety development. Our first potential anchor is a response to a visual anxiety trigger. If you find yourself seeing something and that causing your stress to elevate, then you might want to consider anchors that you can see visually and can help your stress begin to decrease. So, one potential anchor is to write out your next steps as a checklist. How does this work? This is specifically a good tool if you struggle with task paralysis due to anxiety. This means you have a good example is if you have a paper due and all you can think about is the finished product. This might be due to perfectionism sometimes. And you're not able to start because you can't get past how you're going to fail this assignment or how you can't understand the concepts. Instead of thinking about the whole project that you need to complete, instead focus on the next basic step. And when I say basic step, I mean as small as possible. Do you need to open up your laptop and make a new Google Doc file? Do you need to get out the assignment and read over it? Do you need to get out your notes? When you feel unable to move forward, write out a brief list of the smallest tasks you can think of. So, this is essentially a micro task to-do list. One, get out computer. Two, plug in computer. Three, turn on computer. Four, open Google Doc. Again, these really small steps, and then just kind of move through them. So the idea is instead of looking at the endpoint, you're looking at the next point in front of you. And what's important about this as it relates to mindfulness is you want to write this list out, hopefully on a piece of paper, a post-it note, but something that can remain visually apparent because that's your visual anchor. If you can have that note somewhere directly on your computer or next to you, as the anxiety, if it increases again, you can continue to go back to that list and continue to follow it. Whereas if the list is buried on a note on your phone, that's something that's probably not going to be directly in front of your face the whole time that you work. Another way to kind of use the same principle, but with a different approach, is to write down a goal or words of encouragement that will remain visible while you work. So, this is a similar idea of taking that post-it note, writing out what you want to accomplish that day, or what it is you need to hear to help ground yourself. And again, make sure it's visually apparent, somewhere that you can return to it. And that can be where you center your attention when you're stressed out. In responding to auditory triggers, a good method that can honestly apply to all of these, but is helpful particularly for this, is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method. And this is great for test anxiety, which again is often where auditory triggers pop up because you don't need anything to do it. It's just about reframing your perspective and reframing your focus. So, how it works, you start with looking around and naming 5 things you can see. So, right now, I see this picture of this pencil. I see a green background. I see the Zoom chat room. I see my laptop. And I see green text on a grayish background. Then you name 4 things that you hear. I can hear the sound of my own voice. I can hear an airplane outside. I can hear birds chirping. And I can hear my seltzer water bubbling. Then you name 3 things that you feel. I can feel my sweatshirt on my arm, and so on. So you go through and you try to name each of these items, and it becomes harder as you go down this list. We start with the visual because it's the easiest. Once you get to hearing and then feeling, smell, and taste, it becomes more difficult, and that challenge is part of what can help take you away from your anxiety. Starting with 5 things you can see, it's easier, so it helps ease you into this process. But working to name these other items, it's going to refocus your attention a little bit. So, this is a great way to just try to, again, focus on the external world around you, anchor you to the present moment instead of continuing that self perpetuating anxiety cycle. For someone who is responding to auditory triggers, there are some other elements that you might want to consider incorporating white noise, music, or even recordings of cafe sounds, which you can find on YouTube while you're studying. That can be helpful. These might not be available during an exam, so you could even consider earplugs. And if you do try something like that, let your professor know that it's not earbud, it's earplugs, and it's a different thing. But these are all ways to try to combat that auditory instigation. For that internal anxiety trigger, one potential anchor that can be really helpful in refocusing your goal is pairing breathing with a personal mantra. So, how this works is before you enact this, you want to develop a 2-part mantra that is based on what it is you need to hear or what it is you want to hear. So, the first part of the mantra might be your current situation, how you're feeling. So, maybe if you're feeling like you're not good enough, part 1 could be, I feel like I'm not good enough, or I'm overwhelmed by stress, something like that. And then part 2 should be the response of what you need to hear and what would help you specifically. For me, I'm very task oriented, very practical. So I like to hear something kind of realistic that can move me forward, or just something to remind me that these emotions aren't necessarily reality. So a sample mantra could be, even though I feel like a failure, and then my exhale might be, the truth is I have a B, something like that. My sample mantra I have at the bottom of the slide here is inhale, even though I'm overwhelmed, and exhale, I will take this step by step. And that's a good reminder for me to just move forward with the next thing. But how this can be incorporated as a mindfulness technique is you begin by inhaling, and as you breathe in, say that first part of your mantra. So breathe in, even though I'm overwhelmed. And then when you exhale, trying that second part, those words that ground or encourage you. So exhale, I will take this step by step. And then repeat that. Inhale, even though I'm overwhelmed. Exhale, I will take this step by step. In general, when you're responding to negative thoughts, you need to remember that your brain wants to focus on something. Unless you are an expert at meditation, then at that point you may have mastered the art of thinking of nothing. But an easier way to get to that point is to focus on something and be intentional about what you want to focus on. So, the idea with the mantra is that you're recognizing your negative thoughts and you're responding with realistic thoughts. Because even though your thoughts may not be positive, they're negative. Negative isn't necessarily realistic. A lot of times, the term mantra can be associated with overwhelming positivity, live, laugh, love, something that's kind of extreme, but it's important to name that often these super negative thoughts that pop up in these academic spaces are also an extreme. They also don't represent real life. So understand what it is that you need to hear in that moment to help ground you in just what reality is. A great element of this mantra anchor is that it incorporates breathing, which in itself, breathing, having a solid breath in and out, that can act as an anchor. But this works in combating anxiety for a few reasons. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is part of the body that helps relax you. And it also increases the oxygen flow in your body, which helps your body function better. So, breathing, it can act as something for your mind to focus on, but it also physically impacts your body in a way that can help it calm down and help it feel better, which is going to, again, help break out of that cycle that we've been talking about, where the body stresses out the mind, which stresses out the body. So I have a few more tools to help you incorporate these breathing-based anchors. One of the easiest ones is alternate nostril breathing, which we have a picture of right here. Basically, it's a way to slow down your breathing so that you're focusing on it more intentionally. You take one of your fingers or your thumb, as the woman in the picture is doing, and you cover one nostril and inhale slowly. Then you alternate nostrils, you cover the other nostril while releasing the first one, and then you exhale slowly through your nose. Then keep your fingers as they are, inhale slowly through your nose, then change the position of your fingers again and exhale slowly through your nose and just keep going. An easy tool, something intentional, but does not require much preparation. Another breathing-based anchor is called box breathing. This is basically the idea of breathing in counts of four. So you inhale for a count of four, hold your breath for a count of four, exhale for a count of four, and hold for a count of four, and then repeat this. And you can even increase the amount of time if this is something that is helping you. Again, with mindfulness, you're recentering your attention, and something we talked about with the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method is this idea that having a challenge can make it more likely to succeed in drawing your attention away from your anxiety. So, with box breathing, if you're counting, you can start with the 4 counts, but then slowly increase it to 5, 6, 7, 8 if you find that that challenge is acting as a distraction for you in a positive way. The idea isn't to ignore the stress that you're feeling, it's just to refocus your attention to calm your body down so that then you can reapproach the problem or the work you need to do in a more grounded mindset. Another tool that's not breathing based but is based in physicality is called progressive muscle relaxation. The idea is that you focus on one area of your body and tense those muscles. I think the easiest example is thinking of clenching a fist. Your hands out, and then you start making a fist, clenching it, and hold it without hurting yourself. Do that for a little bit until you feel sensation, and then release it. And just focus on the feeling of your hand once you've let that go. You can move on to a different set of muscles, clench your shoulders together, stretch your feet out. But the idea is to do this slowly and gradually and really focus on each part of your body as you do so. The goal with all of these different strategies is to create a toolkit of mindfulness techniques that you can use based on your situation at any given time and based on which tool you need. So try out these different strategies to see what does and does not work for you. Some might be incorporated really easily for you, others may feel incredibly impossible for you to use. And also consider other ways to ground yourself. Whether other ways you can use writing or sound or breathing to get yourself out of your head when you need that assistance. A good tip in incorporating some of these strategies is to practice using them when you don't need them so they come to mind when you do need them. A lot of these approaches are intentionally very easy. They're meant to be easy because when you're paralyzed by academic anxiety, it's difficult to move forward or to do anything. So you want an easy way to reground yourself, but even the easiest solution isn't going to be at the tip of your tongue or your brain or your fingertips when you are having a panic attack. So if you can practice some of these breathing techniques when you aren't stressed out, just when you're walking to class, before bed, when you wake up, it will be more automatic for you to draw on them when you do need them. You can feel free to add any questions to the chat about anything we talked about today or any other mindfulness questions. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining me today and have a great afternoon.